So we're in the Mini again. Now we'll sort of stop start. I want that turning off. Can't stand it. So we did the 0-60 standard, and then what we've done, we've tuned it and we've set everything as the BMW we did recently, because that was the latest sort of 20D with this spec engine that we'd done. And on the long road test, on a longish pull, the EGTs, which on these are not measured pre-turbo, which I think BMW has done a good thing, because pre-turbo EGT sensors fail all the time, but post-turbo ones don't get as hot. So the post-turbo EGTs will get into something stupid like 750, and when you get to that point you start getting limp mode and stuff, and we don't want to start nudging that limiter's there for a reason. You can sort of sit nearer to it, but you don't want to be exceeding it, in my opinion. 760 post-turbo is definitely going to be warm pre-turbo. So, as not to damage the DPF and the turbo and everything, in fact I'll go this way for a little, warm it up a little bit. Pre-turbo, over 1,000 is going to be hot, so post-turbo we don't want to get past that 760. So, we've nudged it down a little bit. The EMPs, exhaust manifold pressure, which these have got a sensor on, which is good, another good BMW thing, Mini thing. They were getting quite high as well, and we're only running 1.7, 1.8 bar of boost, which I know this turbo will do a lot more in the mid-range if we want it to. But the EMPs were getting up to sort of like knocking on 4 bar, so which I'd have to double check if that's absolute or sort of gauge pressure, so minus atmospheric, but we'll see. Should be able to get a little squeeze now. I'll put that traction into dynamics, that was best last time. I'll put it all, yeah, leave it in dynamic, get a little squeeze. Oh yeah, a lot faster. That is good. A lot more immediate. So as I was saying, we've turned the boost down a little bit, and that's made a decent impact on the EMPs. We've turned the fuel down a little bit, and that's made a decent impact on the EGTs. So we'll get it on the dyno and see what it does, and that should, I'm hoping it's well over 200. It needs to be sort of 210s, 220s for me to be happy. But again, with the exhaust manifold pressures, God, this is really responsive. It's a subjective thing. A lot of people just ignore them and just make as much power, which this turbo will do 2.5 bar of boost, no problem. But if your EMPs are doing 8 bar when you do that, then that's just ridiculous. So we don't want to do that. Let's see what we can do here. So when we were standard, we ended up with a 7.4 to 60, a 7.38, something like that to 60, which is a bit slower than book time. The quickest we'd achieve with this dynamic traction control and just revving its nuts off. So let's just see what happens. Bit bogged down. It pulls a lot harder. That was 7.21, so it's definitely quicker, but with this traction control on and the remap, it didn't seem to get away as quick. I might try, because we only did a couple of launches. I'm going to turn it all the way off. See if I can actually get it to launch the DS deactivated. The difference in acceleration, 0 to 60 in a manual front wheel drive car's probably not the best test, so we'll try and get some figures, sort of 0 to 100 and stuff like that, which I think we should be able to get them before this video goes out. But it pulls really hard. Obviously where this is going to struggle is on the temperatures at higher speeds and the track, so we'll have to see where that is. But pull over again. Oh, I don't know, revs. 7.32. It's all in the driver. Sort of need some. We'll do some analysis from the V-box later on, sort of in gear stuff. 30 to 50, 50 to 70 seems to be what a lot of people like to compare. I don't think this car's got enough in its standard to do a 100 to 200 kilometres, which seems to be the European autobahn storming standard. I'm sure them figures exist somewhere, so we'll get them. Yeah, this drive's really good. Can't wait to see what power it does on dyno. The torque's just tons more. But what I think, what's really going to be difficult to sort of quantify, obviously on a dyno graph or what have you, is the difference in just the response. Like, obviously it's not a laggy turbo by any stretch, it's pretty much straight there, but it's even better now. It's like boom, straight there, even in like 4th gear, which compared to what we're used to on the track when we've got like the big turbos on, we're used to sort of probably a second from you putting your foot down to getting full boost. That's probably a decent amount of time for the sort of spool. You're not waiting a second for anything to happen, but you definitely don't get, it's going to be probably 350 foot-pound of torque instantly like you do with this, and not even half a second. Really happy with this. I think this, obviously when we get further into the project, we're only a day in at the minute, things are going to progress pretty quickly. I might have another one attempt at an 0 to 60. It's going to involve a lot more driver skill than I've got to get this to where it's get. This is definitely a sub 7 seconds. It should be into the mid 6s, I'd have thought. We'll see what happens. So that were a 7.1 with a bit more res, a bit more wheel spin. There's a lot. There's a lot in this launch, in this front wheel drive on road tyres business. I'll definitely get it into 6s. But whether that's quick enough for most people. What is quick? This is a fun little car. Reminds me of the Ibiza. Yellow, manual, fast. So yeah, let's get it on the dyno. We'll see what power it does now. Put the standard tune back on, see what power it does. Obviously if we're not happy with either of them, then can't really do anything about the standard power. But if we're a bit down standard and we're a bit down on the tune, then we don't get too worried about it. Tyres and temperature, whether the dyno's having a good day or not, seems to make a difference. So we'll see what we can do. Things have changed a little bit on this since I last drove it. Obviously, I said we're going to get it on the dyno next, but we're quite busy. So what we did, we got a little bit of free time, or the Mini was sat there for a little while. So we've had Gavin wrap all the chrome bits, the little sort of intake that goes to nothing is getting painted black because it were a bit in a funny shape. We could have probably wrapped it, but Lee were doing some gloss black stuff anyway for a transporter, so we just said just stick some gloss black on that, so that should look a little bit better as well. So Danny's got some pictures and shots and everything. We've wrapped everything we could. These were going to be a little bit of a pain, so we've ordered some black ones because you can buy them anyway. The handles were a real tricky job to do, but they look a lot better. And then the fuel cap, that's going to be sorted. We just ordered a black one because it's easier to do that. We didn't really want to try and wrap that, so that's all good. So obviously everybody's here for the dyno. So this is an 170 horsepower engine anyway, which perfect, 170 horsepower. That occurs at what, 37, 3800 RPM, so that's good. The book at 266 foot-pounds, but this is done 280, which is a few percent different, so that's absolutely fine. So when I was out on the road test, I talked about the sort of spicy tune that we put on there, that we're actually getting 2-aught post-turbo, getting to 780 or something like that. So which that was, where are we? That's that tune. So 340 foot-pound, 213 horsepower. Obviously that were too much. The main region it were getting hot were right at the top end, but it didn't really feel like you want to rev it too high this anyway, so you probably only rev it to 4.5 grand before it sort of past its best anyway, but that's because the turbine is so small. The engine feels like it can breathe pretty good. So we'd done the other tune on the road and turned it down a little bit, and that's what we ended up with. So we actually ended up with a little bit more torque by lowering the boost request, and I don't believe we added any fuel. I think we took a little bit out, so God knows why it's gone up a little bit, but a little bit more torque. We've only dropped a tiny bit of power, sort of in the peak power zone, 3800 RPM-ish, 4 grand-ish. And then where we've sort of lowered the EGTs by about 60 or 80, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, is where we've tapered it off here, which the EMP's dropped loads here, which is good. So, as I said, revving it past 4.5, there was no point anyway. It felt like it was getting strangled, and when you looked at the logs, the exhaust pressure, the exhaust temperatures, the boost pressure's dropping at that point anyway, because this turbo can't really do it. It's not really made any difference to how it drives on the road at all, and we've only dropped best part of 3 or 4 horsepower, so it's definitely a sacrifice worth making. So save them graphs, and that's the baseline. Obviously, we've got other mods that we want to do now. The charge temps on this are not getting ridiculously hot. I believe on the dyno we're getting to about 50s. So I think putting an intercooler on there is not going to really yield a ton of power on the dyno. But I'm not quite sure if it fits in with the track driving that we wanted to do. Because we've got like a sort of a run plan that we want to do when we go to the track. Like do this, do that, do the other, and see what difference it makes on the track. I don't think we're going to have time to fit an intercooler at the track side, and I don't really think it's probably not as quantifiable. So we'll see what we can do. We'll come up in the next video with the plan for what we're going to do next. There's a few little jobs we're going to do before the track, so they'll be recorded. Then we'll get to the track and we'll come up with what we're going to do. But really happy with the power output. The BMW did, I think, at the same sort of boost and fuel levels, did 230, which I'll find that graph and maybe we'll fit that in with a video if it makes sense. But there's a bit of customer details on that, so I don't really want to show that on the camera. But there's definitely a difference in how the exhaust's flowing and how much the DPF will take, because there's a difference in the power that they did. Obviously the drivetrain losses, you'd think rear wheel drive would be more, but it's compensated by the dyno as well. So I think that's a decent gain. It would be nice to get more. It'd be nice to be nearer to 220s. I think you can definitely have that if you ignore the EGTs and if you ignore the EMPs, but that's how things start to blow up. So if people are quoting, I think some people are saying to us, oh, I've got 230s, 240s from the BMW engines. Maybe, but not in these anyway. That silly beep has wrapped it up. Cheers.